it'll be lovely to hear also from you. So welcome, and let's get going. There you go, Morris.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
As you can see, this week's...
Sorry, can you mute everyone first?
I can mute everybody, yes.
And
Thank
then
you for reminding me.
Thank you.
I'm running a whole collection of computers here. It gets confusing. I lose track of what's going on. Mute all, yes, go for that. Right, as you can see, this week's Sedra is Parsha Noah. Parsha Noah is a very interesting one, containing many themes. Amongst them, of course, was shipbuilding. It's interesting to note that the mighty Titanic, built by professionals, only lasted 4 days in its maiden voyage. Yet the amateur shipwright Noach built a ship that lasted for 40 days in its maiden voyage, even with the problem of the woodpeckers in the wooden vessel. Possibly this was due to the quality of the material used by the timber merchant, as indicated by one of the few remaining labels from the ark there. Whoops. Oh, we skipped one there, never mind. Well, there we are. And then our amateur shipwright becomes a farmer and a winemaker, indulging in his produce, and is embarrassed when his sons find him inebriated. We are then informed of the generations of Noah and all the begetting that is required. First, we're told of Noah's 3 sons. Oh, it's got out of sequence. There we are. Oh, totally out of sequence now. We're told of Noah's 3 sons, Japheth, Ham, and Shem, followed by details of their begetting, starting with Japheth, and then Ham. And then however, in the 153 verses that inform us of Noah's life, and in the middle of all this begetting, there are 9 verses that seem to be placed at random. The position of these verses in the middle of the generations of Noah is strange, and the content is not contiguous with a major storyline. Oh, this is interesting here. Got to try and run too many things together. Then we're told of Shem's begetting. The 9 verses interrupting the genealogy of Noach refer, of course, to Migdal Babel, the Tower of Babel. The Book of Jubilees mentions that the tower's height as being 5,433 cubits and 2 palms, or 8,150 feet. About 3 times the height of the Burj Khalifa, currently the world's tallest building, or roughly 1.6 miles high. That puts it about 150 feet above the point where supplemental oxygen would be required to avoid altitude sickness. However, according to the material sciences discipline, as well as the laws of physics, it would have been impossible to build a structure that high. The highest it would go would probably be about 1.3 miles before the structure would crumble under its own weight. As a vanity project, the tower was a great idea. It must have been a great benefit to enhancing the local economy. But as to its usefulness, well, that's another story. Rashi, commenting on the first verse of the story of Migdal Babel, writes that the people constructed the tower in an attempt to prevent another flood. They said every 1,565 years, the period between the creation of Adam and the flood, the sky collapses. Let us make supports for it. So on the face of it, a good idea. This explanation, taken from the Midrash, should perhaps be understood as an allegorical insight into the mistake made by the people of that generation. They thought they could solve their problems and ensure their well-being solely through their own ingenuity and industriousness, without the need for Hashem's or religion. They sought to construct supports for the heaven in the euphemistic sense by presuming for themselves the power and ability to protect themselves, rather than understand that Hashem brought the flood in response to mankind's sinfulness and corruption. They instead decided they can somehow take control of the earth by themselves and keep it safe without having to rely on Hashem. The keeping safe bit doesn't seem to be going too well at the moment. Because every story has at least two sides, Rashi has an alternate approach to the Migdal Bavel story. He claims that the people built the tower in an attempt to wage war against Hashem. The people argued that he, Hashem, does not have the right to choose the upper world for himself. Let us ascend to the heavens and wage war against him. In this instance, too, the Midrash's comment, not necessarily to be taken literally, it perhaps means that the people rejected the notion of Hashem's omnipotence and control over the earth and sought to oppose it. They assumed for themselves the upper worlds, the power and the authority that until then was viewed as the exclusive province of Hashem. They waged war against the belief that Hashem's unlimited control, asserting their independent ability to govern and control their own affairs without any involvement on Hashem's part. Having already promised there would not be another flood, Hashem did the only sane thing possible. He made it difficult for them to understand each other and work as a cohesive whole, and so be unable to attempt, let alone complete the project. Whilst I would not set myself in opposition to Rashi, I have, however, an alternate view. I think that the whole Tower of Babel saga is simply a metaphor used to encourage the efforts needed for understanding and communication. Moving on a few years, we find a king not understanding a plaintiff. Moses, who had the speech impediment, had to rely on his brother to translate for him, although he spoke the lingua franca at the time. Here we have a failure of understanding and communication, possibly caused by a hardened heart. In requiring an interpreter, the person being addressed distances themselves from the communication, and a level of misunderstanding results. Over the years, you may have noticed that English is in fact not my first language. That position goes to Klingon. Don't worry, I'm not subject to any of the infamous Klingon poetry. Although it seems that Klingon, though, seems to be an indecipherable language, yet it's very expressive and passionate, but sadly little understood. This is yet another example of lack of understanding. Brent itself has 149 different languages, though sadly not including Klingon. And according to the 2011 census, 30 of the 33 London boroughs each had more than 100 different languages. Amidst this rich diversity of language, we are meant to speak peace unto nations. How? There was a time, however, when we could, but our apparent arrogance resulted in all this diversity. The Oxford English Dictionary defines the verb to hear as to receive or become conscious of a sound using your ears. That same dictionary defines the verb to listen as to pay attention to somebody or something that you can hear. Perhaps we should mitigate our lack of understanding by, instead of just hearing what someone says, we could perhaps listen to what they're saying. Just as importantly, listen to what they're not saying. Then maybe we could speak peace unto nations. Or perhaps we will get a Babel fish. Shabbat shalom.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you very much for that, Maurice. It was very interesting. Stuart, having been let down last week, you're willing to do Kabbalat Shabbat for us today, so thank you